Oh, we're on. There you go. Well, hi, everybody. Pat Mesiti here, a very special afternoon with our great friend, George Christensen, freedom fighter, freedom advocate, incredible writer, a sage of our times, an insightful guy. You know, there's an interesting thing in the scripture. And, of course, you know, today we're speaking about things right across the board. Not a religious format, but I want to share something with you. That there's a very special group of people in the Old Testament called the children of Issachar, and they had a very special gift. They had a gift called, they understood the times to know what the people of God should do. Right now, the Western world is in decline. Make no mistake about it. We're seeing this empire collapse. I personally believe through the resurgence of the Roman Empire as is predicted in the book of Daniel. And I know for many of you go, oh, I'm not into all that sort of stuff. Well, you better be, because we are seeing what was predicted hundreds of years ago today, right before our very eyes. You are seeing bodily autonomy going down the gurgler. And is it that the mark? No, but it's a good forerunner. We're seeing a move toward a one world religion. We're seeing very, very strongly seeing a move toward a one world government. Thank you, Charles Schwab. You want us to own nothing and be happy. Sadly, we're not buying that rhetoric. However, today we're going to cover a lot of things. And before I bring George on, historian Dr. Edwin Orr said this. There were 5 things that destroyed the Roman Empire. Number 1, greed. And we've seen that in the last couple of years, haven't we? Through all the stuff and all the pharmaceuticals, and now all of a sudden certain things that our good friend George said were great weapons against that hideous disease. They laughed him, they mocked him. I'm still waiting for Channel 9 and the likes to give him an apology. But greed. Then he said the political corruption, where we're seeing that what happened in our country in the last couple of years and what's still happening in our country. We have sold our country on the altar of climate change, which is not about looking after our planet at all. And let me remind you that this is our Father's earth, and he hasn't given up on it just yet. And if you think giving politicians a couple of dollars, actually a whole industry, and it is going to help us, forget about it. We're going to talk about climate change today. So he talked about political corruption, greed, gambling. I mean, right now, all you got to do is turn on your phone and you're hit with gambling. Matter of fact, Albanese brought in Shaquille, who I think quite a lovely guy, smart business guy, to help him promote The Voice. We're going to talk about that. Strange enough, Shaquille O'Neal is not the former owners of the land in America. They were the American Indians. Now, I'm not talking about this Indian with the little dot. I'm talking about this Indian. And obviously, Albo got his people wrong. And so greed and corruption, political corruption. And here's the big one, indifference towards God and perversion. I'm working on a study right now, and I'll be teaching this in a few weeks' time on the return of these evil gods, by which our children are being sacrificed on the altar of Molech. And if you don't know who that is, basically look at what they're doing right now with abortion. And the sacrifice of our children and their innocence through the whole transgender agenda, which is nothing new, by the way. I've got to tell you, nothing that you're seeing today is new. These evil entities just become upmarket. They wear suits. They change color from red, black to teal or green. And we're going to look at that today. And I've got to tell you, my heart gets stirred every time I read about some of the stuff that George is doing. So without further ado, our great friend, a great Australian, a man who's standing up for freedoms, George Christensen. How are you, George?
Well, thanks very much, Pat. I'm doing very well, and you're on fire. I like the Native American impersonation that we just saw. I didn't think I'd ever see Pat Mesiti do that. But anyway.
Do you know, George, there comes a time where you got to take off the clubs and just, you know, I try to be postured, but my Italian passion just gets the better of me. I just had a Jewish friend of mine over here today who's, you know, his family suffered so much. And he said, I'm seeing this again. You know, my relatives saw this before. And whilst I'm not comparing what we're going through to to what happened in the Second World War. By golly, I tell you, it is the trickle that becomes a flood. But George, I've got to tell you, your articles.
You're onto something there, if I can just jump in, because I too have spoken to many people that have come out of dictatorships, whether it's Eastern Soviet bloc or former Eastern Soviet bloc countries, or whether it's Vietnam or wherever it might be, and they say, look, the signs are here. And in fact, Rod Dreher, who, if people haven't read Rod Dreher's books, I really encourage them to get hold of them. He's written two great books, one called The Benedict Option, compulsory reading for all Christians and all people who believe in traditionalism. And secondly, he's written another book called Live Not by Lies, which is an abbreviation of a quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, or it's a mantra almost that he expounded. And what that book is all about is about people of the former Eastern Soviet bloc who are now in the United States and in other Western countries that are seeing the same shifting sands that they saw back before their countries became communist. And that's got to ring alarm bells. So many different people from that place see this same thing in action today in the West.
Do you know what's funny, George, is, 2 years ago, people like you and I, and I've got to say, even from our Christian leaders, they mocked us. They told us we're a conspiracy theorists, we're all this sort of stuff. They didn't even believe that George Soros existed. They didn't even believe that Charles Schwab existed. And now we know, hello. We seem to be the what do we call it, the party poopers who tell things before they happen. Again, might I remind our audience, like the children of Issachar, they had an understanding of the times to know what to do. And I personally want to thank you, George. I know you paid a big price, but you're a great man. I'm still waiting for those reporters from Channel 9 to apologise to you, but we'll leave that alone. George.
Well, thanks, Pat. You talked about my articles, I think, in Nation First that I've been putting out this week in relation to the fall of the West. And did you want me to go through some of what we've written
George,
about there,
exactly.
Pat?
Please go through some of that with us.
Well, thanks, mate. People can read these full articles at nationfirst.substack.com. But Pat, there is some that's behind a paywall, but there's a 7-day free trial period, so people can jump on there and simply they don't have to pay a cent. They can read the articles and then they can unsubscribe if they so desired. But there's 4 areas. This is why I'm just looking down at my notes here. 4 areas we've pinpointed that show the decline of the West. One is decadence, and that's a slide in cultural mores. The other one is economics, and particularly the fact that we are in such debt these days. Another one is demography, and if we have a look at the demographics across the West, it is pretty much in decline. And the final one we look is in today is democracy. And I want to just pinpoint democracy, because people will think, well, what do you mean by that? And you used the word before, corruption. I think there is a corruption of our democracy going on. And the corruption is our political elites have strayed so far from the path that ordinary citizens want. There is nothing more to actually say than the political system has been corrupted. Let me take the issue of immigration, for instance. Now, right across the Western world, there is a push for dismantling borders or making it extremely easy for people to cross borders and come into any Western country. But I guarantee that if you poll most of those Western countries, they do not want open borders. They do not want uncontrolled immigration. They do not want huge numbers of immigrants coming into their country. Because of various factors. One, Pat, it displaces economic effort, displaces workers that are in that country already. It adds to the growing pains of a country, adds to infrastructure needs and traffic jams and all the rest of it. We certainly know it in our capital cities in Australia. And also there is the creation of ethnic suburbs, ethnic conclaves, where that's not conducive towards a homogenous society and a society that gets along. The greatest example we've seen of that is Sweden. Now, let's bring it back to Australia. So the Labor government, the Albanese Labor government, when they were in opposition, they railed for years and years on end, along with their political masters in the union movement, against what they saw as a push for more foreign labour being brought into Australia by the former Liberal National government. Now, that was one area that actually I pretty much agreed with them. I came around to agreeing with them that we were seeing far too much, and it was far too easy for many businesses to simply go and get a foreign worker. Now, Labor gets in, and you think, well, the union paymasters and puppet masters are going to pull the strings here and curb it. And Labor's been attacking the idea of more and more foreign workers coming into the country, but then they hold a jobs and skills summit. And these multinational corporations, it was a joke. It was a joke. I'm going to tell you, there really is only one substantial outcome out of that jobs and skills summit. The multinational corporations, the big financial institutions, and all the rest of them came into town with their suits and ties and their little pocket handkerchiefs and all the rest of it, and they told the government, we need to have more foreign workers into the country, despite the fact that union academics, such as, I think her name is Jo Howes, and I might have that name wrong, but anyway, senior union academics or union inclined academics have actually done empirical studies which show that bringing more foreign workers in not only displaces Australian jobs, but also drives down wages. And so what's Labor's response to this Jobs and Skills Summit and the call from the big end of town, from the multinationals, from the big corporates, from the big banks? Their response is they're going to bring immigration levels to the highest that Australia has ever seen. Now, if there's anything more than the corruption of the political process to prove, I don't know what you need, because the people consistently in polls have said to the government they don't want huge immigration numbers. They want to curb it. They don't want this huge Australia. They want an Australia that can deal with infrastructure issues. They want an Australia where the future for their children is not displaced. They want Australia where wages can grow so that we can at least keep up with the spiralling cost of inflation. But what the Labor government has done has just been to cave in to huge corporate interests and say, well, we're just going to nix everything that we said before and we're going to bring in a whole heap more foreign workers. That, my friend, is the corruption of the political process in play. And it has led to this lack of trust in our political institutions. And eventually that's going to lead to just a complete and utter break between the populace and the political elite.
It's almost like, George, to me, they want the country to collapse economically. Now, I just want to say something on the record here. I am the son of an immigrant. My father came here in the 50s. And I tell you what my dad did. My dad came here, and yes, there was labour shortage and so forth. But let me tell you what my dad did. He kissed the ground. He integrated his family here, and he was grateful for the very country. He didn't take a dole. He didn't go out on Centrelink. He didn't take payments. He got a job the second day and started working at Bankstown Hospital as a labourer. And for those of you that think I'm anti-immigration, I'm not anti-immigration. I'm anti the corruption that has brought about this agenda to ruin our nation economically. We don't have enough housing. We've already got a housing shortage here. We've got good Australians, great Australians, that lost their jobs over a government mandate that could fill these so-called voids that we have. It's a total crock, and George is right. Completely corrupt, George, completely. Well said. Yeah. Now, George.
Well, I just got to add to you what you said there, Pat. I mean, I'm the son of an immigrant to this country as well. And so I've got nothing against immigration per se. It's the level of immigration.
Correct.
And I think that it's the disconnect between what the average person in the street wants and what's just happened
Yeah.
at the behest of big corporations. So the average person in the street wants a low level of immigration. They probably don't want no immigration. They want a low manageable level of immigration. But
100%.
what's just happened? Businesses blown the whistle, and the government responded like the lapping dog, and suddenly we've got the highest level of immigration that we're ever going to see in this country. That's what's happened.
Now, George, interesting thing happened today in the upper house. The upper house passed their 43%, emissions by 2030. There's that date. There's that date again. 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And yeah, when asked in Parliament if they could name one country that went solar and wind power where electricity was cheaper, what do you reckon? How many countries do you reckon they were able to name, George?
Oh, well, look, I reckon the answer would be nothing.
Absolutely. Zero.
And so they wouldn't have been able to name it. I reckon. I haven't seen that clip yet, but I reckon that this would become one of the artful forms of trying to dodge a question the best way you can, because I doubt that the responder even went close to answering the question, because there is just no, you are going to, and we're doing it to our country, we're doing it to Australia right now. We're removing baseload power under the guise that somehow the removal of a coal-fired power station in Australia that is a fraction of a percentile of a contribution to the fraction of a percentile that Australia produces in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, which is a fraction of a percentile to the overall human contribution to carbon dioxide emissions, which is a fraction of a percentile of what's out there in the atmosphere. So, a percentile of a percentile of a percentile of a percentile of a percentile, and we think that's going to make a difference. That's even if you believe in the religion that is man-made or catastrophic man-made climate change, and it is a religion.
It is a religion
now, Pat. It is a religion.
And so, and they've got their patron Saint Greta out there, little Saint Greta. Maybe they should do a little Madonna of her, and of course Adam Bandit could be the high priest. I call him Adam Bandit. I mean, the guy just does my head in. But sorry, George, I couldn't help myself.
No, mate, that's you're right. There's definitely correlations between the climate change alarmists and cult organisations. So I think you're on the money there. But mate, all it's going to do is end up hurting Australians. You're going to displace all of this, and we are displacing all of this baseload coal-fired power. We're replacing it with unreliables. We shouldn't call them renewables; they are unreliables. And we're replacing this with unreliable energy, of which you need battery storage. And I've got to say that doesn't even really work. But the level of battery storage that's required to not even really work is so immense it's not funny. Now, what's happened? Surprise, surprise. The globalist multinational organisation that's got its fingers in just about every pie, BlackRock, has come into Australia, knowing full well that the Albanese government is passing these laws, right? And they've come in and they've invested in big batteries. They've invested in just enough, Pat, just enough to not even replace two of the power stations that are actually being decommissioned. So, in other words, they've not added anything. That they haven't even replaced what's being taken out of the system, and that's $1 billion investment in these batteries, right? So that gets the headlines, $1 billion investment. But it hasn't replaced what we've gotten. And so why would you, that will probably be the largest investment we're going to see in batteries in Australia. So why did they do it? Why did they do it? Well, if you've got a situation that's been created where government actions have basically stripped the supply of reliable energy, and you can just put in enough to not even cover what's there, guess what? the demand is going to outstrip the supply, and you can actually say, you can name the price you want for your product.
Correct.
Because unless the Australian people are going to want blackouts and brownouts and energy rationing, they will pay whatever it takes. And so BlackRock aren't silly billies. They've come here to make mozza out of us on the back of what the Albanese government has done. And that and I want to get onto the undermining of sovereignty, Pat, but I'll let you respond.
No, George, what most people don't realise is these companies want to bankrupt companies, take over, break them up, make money. But here's the other thing. With a lot of this stuff, what they're doing to our farmers, what they're doing to our coal industry, here's a thought, and I want our listeners to listen. You probably got a phone that was made overseas, a computer that's made overseas, you're wearing clothes that's made overseas, probably with stuff in your home that was made overseas, and yet the number one thing that's become the backbone of our nation that we export and we bring money from, not we're paying out from, these alarmists, these activists, whether they're green, teal, they're all the same. These yuppies that have no frickin' clue about what the average Australian in southwest Sydney or anyone else has to go through. Do you know what? These people are willing to shut down, hurt industry because they want to control industry and they want to control. This is one of the reasons why I keep saying to people, you've got to become financially independent of the banksters and the gangsters. And George, what I see, what they're doing is they're trying to control food supply, which means then they control you. Control food supply, control electricity. In California right now, folks, that woke Californian evil man running the state of California who told everyone, go get electric cars, he's just told them they can't charge their cars anymore. Or they've got to be careful when they're charging their cars. How ridiculous is that, George?
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous. And Pat, I think you've hit a very big nail on the head here. So we went through in 2020, 2021, and we're still going through it today, although most people have just completely shrugged their shoulders and given up on it. We've gone through the crisis that is the pandemic, or in inverted commas, the pandemic, right? We've gone through that crisis, but how many crises of a global scale, overwhelming global scale, have you seen emerge since 2020? It's like, we never had this before, but now they're popping up all, quite often. We've got the food crisis. There's going to be food scarcity, and there already is, and we're seeing, things like the price of meat go up, meat become a bit more scarce. We've seen, lettuce and eggs and all the rest of it. Suddenly there's a food crisis, and KFC don't put lettuce in their burgers anymore. They put cabbage in them. So that's number one. Then we've got an energy crisis. And I've just talked about this. The fact is that the Australian energy market operator is already saying we're going to be suffering blackouts come next year. And you've got ministers of government that are up there prepping the populace, saying you're going to have to not use your dishwasher, or not use your heater, or not use your air conditioner. So that's already prepping the population for energy rationing. Yeah. And there's so many of these different crises that are coming up. I haven't even got into the Ukraine and Russia situation, which is another crisis. But it just seems to be very convenient that the population since 2020 has been conditioned to live in this constant state of fear and crises, Pat.
Well, you must never waste a great pandemic. It gives you a chance to create a great reset, doesn't it, George?
Well, that's what I'm leading to. I mean, I think the saying that goes back to someone in US politics, I think it's Karl Rayner, was you never let a good crisis go to waste. So they're not, and they're accelerating their plans. When I say they, I'm talking about the globalist elite. I'm talking about the World Economic Forum. I'm talking about the United Nations. I'm talking about all of the major corporations. It is all connected, Pat. It is all connected, and increasingly our political elite are siding with these people to actually bring about this great reset. What's the great reset? Well, it's the restructuring of society economically, socially, culturally, in just about every way that you can think. We're not going to go back to what worked and what's the natural order of things. You know, the natural order, Pat, family, nations, free enterprise, people actually rolling up their sleeves and actually putting out their talents and their skills, putting them to work. And it benefits you because, Pat, I make widgets and you need widgets. And guess what? You make horse bridles and I need horse bridles or something like that, right? So that would be a nice system where I can give you all my widgets and you can give me all your horse bridles, and we're trading, we're helping each other, and we're helping ourselves and our families. That's not the kind of reset that they want to go back to. What they're doing is they're putting all of these major globalist institutions, all these major multinational corporations at the heart of manufacturing the reset. And these are the people, the very people and the very institutions, the very organizations and corporations that have actually led us to the point where we are today, where there is such a disparity between the haves and the have-nots, between the rich and the poor, and where we've seen capitalism devolve into crony capitalism, where you've got big brother and big government in bed together. And these are the people that are going to be driving the Great Reset, Pat.
Do you know, George, my daughter was doing an assignment the other day, and George, on Animal Farm. Remember the book Animal Farm? And she said, Dad, can I read you from my assignment? And I said to her, Sophia, what do you see? She says, this is happening now.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? And here's, folks, let me just say before I get to my next subject with George. George mentioned a great book before. Let me recommend you a really, really good book. It's by a guy called John, and it's called Revelation. And if you have a read of that, and you will see that a lot of these things are coming to pass. Now, I know some of my preacher friends go, well, there you go. We were just going to go with it and throw out. No. Keep reading in the book, because there was a remnant. There was a bunch of freedom fighters that did not bow the knee, did not comply. I've had some of them say, well, you know, when we get that big Antichrist, we'll make some noise. Man, if you can't defeat a little Goliath, what makes you think I'm going to trust you with a big fella when he comes along? But George, why is there right now this march? And when you looked at the Economic Forum, which, by the way, the World Economic Forum, our Prime Minister, or former Prime Minister, with many portfolios, the guy that said it's not my job had about 7 or 8 extra ones, all for our safety, of course. He was invited, and in that introduction at the World Economic Forum, Mr. Morrison was congratulated for his work towards the push towards the digital identity. And by the way, the new Prime Minister of the UK, she was a very special guest with such notable people as Fauci and Xi Jinping and Zuckerberg, incredible people that care so much about your well-being. But they gave him his marching orders in that intro that I played on Pre and Pushback. Why this push? I mean, we all know, but I want to hear it from your mouth because you've studied it. I read the article, brilliant article. You've got to follow George on his Substack. Why this push, George? And I want everyone to listen to this.
So digital identity, it's the platform. It's the platform. Without digital identity, they can't do what they want to do. And what they ultimately want to do is, I think, and this is speaking a little bit metaphysically and philosophically, they want to turn human beings from human beings into just products, basically.
Correct.
So we can be scanned, we can be tracked. This digital identity.
You mean like Harari said that we, for the first time in history, we are able to hack human animals? That guy, kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you're going there, you're going where it ends up, and that's exactly where it ends up. And you think it's crazy, and you go and you listen to what they say, you read what they've written, and this is exactly where it's leading to. So you get digital identity. You then have like the system, the platform that you can build everything else on. And so part of that platform is going to be then digital finance. And that's one element of control. That is coming right now. Our central bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, is talking about this. Now, it's not just happening in Australia, it's happening all over the world. There is a push in multiple jurisdictions for two things at the moment: digital identity systems that are compulsory for the populace, and also a centralized, a central bank digital currency, which is not to be confused with cryptocurrency, which is completely decentralized and free, but a centralized government-controlled currency. More than just a government-controlled currency, it can be controlled by the issuer of the funds, big corporations, surprise, surprise. So, for instance, they could limit what, where, and how people spend their pay packet with. I mean, think about that. They're not just talking about centralizing it, they're talking about making these digital currencies programmable. I mean, you could have a climate change footprint set on it where you can't spend your money within a certain radius of where you live, because that's just seen as being, damaging to the planet.
And you're not a good global citizen at the same time, like they're doing in China right now.
And you might have a limit on the amount that you can spend, because when you breach that limit, you've suddenly gone past what your individual carbon footprint should be. And there's actually credit cards out there, Pat, that already have this built into it. But yes, then we start getting even further. We've got social credit score systems like they have in China, but also like they have in provinces in Italy now. So this is also coming. There are British members of Parliament that are standing up and proposing de facto social credit systems for anyone that has an online presence, where you would have to, you'd be allocated a truth score. You talked about George Orwell. Think about 1984. A truth score. That is unbelievable. But these are erstwhile democratic representatives of the people out there saying, this is what society needs, and this is what the public wants. So you go from that, Pat, to eventually where they can, this might sound bizarre and it is a leap, but boy, oh boy, it's not me making it up. This is in Klaus Schwab's books. This is what Harari said. This is what they're all saying. They're all writing down, that they want to see a fusion between humanity and artificial intelligence.
Correct.
And the end result will be some form of microchip. And the microchip will be linked to the digital currency, where you can just swipe and you can, you can access all you want there. But also that will be hardwired with our bodies. And ultimately what they want, you know how you get fact check on social media? The thing pop up might tell you that what you've posted is misleading, even though it's not, because it's just some left-wing fact checker that's giving his opinion and response to what you've written. Well, they want to do that with your brain, Pat, with your brain, to ensure that the things you see, the things you read, the things you view are fact-checked immediately, and they don't go to your brain. Think about that. This is what people in the World Economic Forum, all those associated with them, reckon the future is and the future should be, where we are protected by our illustrious overlords, by the globalist elites, so-called elites.
I call them deletes,
from our own thoughts.
I call them the deletes, because they want to delete anything that stands for any kind of righteousness or anything like that. One of the things I'm very grateful you said, George, and I don't want to get it now because I'll talk about it at the end, is you said we don't want to confuse what they're doing with the currency with crypto, because there's a lot of stuff out there that, look, at the end of the day, we've got to occupy till he comes, and we've got to be wise as serpents and as innocent as doves, and people get those things confused. And I've got more to say that at the end. And we need to be people that are smart and ahead of the pile and create our own financial freedom, unless you're going to be subject to the cartels and the banksters. But George, this sounds it can be awfully disparaging and depressing. What can we do? What can we do in this current climate where it can be so overwhelming? You think, well, I'm just, I'm Betty from Bankstown, and I'm Bill from Bastille, and I'm Helen from Helensvale. Well, what can I do? George, what can we do as average Australians in Australia to be able to withstand and stand against these, what I call, hordes of hell?
Yeah. And look, it is a big thing, Pat, because, a lot of people will think, well, what can I do against multinational corporations, global institutions, these extremely powerful people. And look, I got to be straight up and honest here. I don't have all the answers, but I got some suggestions. You know, when you link it back as you did before to the Book of Revelations, and it's hard not to when they're talking about you know, the idea of microchipping people, and you correlate that with the you know, the popular
The mark.
The mark of the beast, the popular notion that comes out of the Book of Revelations, the mark of the beast. It's easy to see that analogy, but that leads me to the first thing. Obviously, prayer. I mean, if you are a Christian, I am, you are, and I know many of your listeners are, perhaps even all of them, Pat, and viewers.
I wouldn't say all of them, George, but
yeah.
we've got a few there.
Well, prayer is important. Can I just say to my agnostic and atheist friends who consider themselves freedom fighters, and I think they are freedom fighters, have a look at the old Greek concept of the Logos. Christians believe in this too. That's what we call Jesus Christ, the Logos. And the Logos means the point of rationality. And so there's something to be said about wanting to be rational human beings and wanting to be in touch with rationality, the right order of the universe. So firstly, I say prayer, meditation, if you're not into prayer, trying to get yourself in the right order, in the natural order. That means looking inwards, changing things about yourself. Now, a priest once said to me, a French priest actually, who was a learned theologian, when I was sort of having a bit of a moment of despondency, he didn't help. I asked him, what can I do politically about these you know, these big things, these big, you know, worldwide things that are happening. And he's told me that I was wasting my time, which I disagree with. But he said actually something after that that was quite interesting. He said, all you can do is serve God and grow a large family and instill in the next generation the knowledge that they need. And so that is a very important thing as well. We need to be careful that our young people, whether we're parents or grandparents, our young people aren't put into the clutches of those that are pushing a Marxist, globalist, woke ideology and implanting that in our kids. We've got to step up. We've got to reclaim our children, and we've got to educate them in the right way. And the homeschooling phenomenon is growing. I've seen some stats the other day out of the US, the largest that it's ever been in the US history, homeschooling movement. And I think that probably is the same in Australia. But Pat, there's a lot of other practical things that we can do. I want to give a shout out here. Well, I want to give a shout out here to Monica Smith from Reignite Democracy, who has pushed this global walkout movement. And it's getting a lot of pickup around the world, actually. Needs to get a bit more pickup in Australia. And so she's every week putting out strategies around how people can push back, can resist the Great Reset. How do we go about the Great Resistance? Well, use cash. Use cash. And when you use cash, you know, tell the small business owner that, look, I'm doing this for you so that you have more control. Plug out from the system for a week, for a day, and just use cash. Don't use your cards. Leave them at home. That's one way we can defeat them. But I was speaking with Alex Jones, you know, the great and much maligned Alex Jones, but the guy who's literally been more right than he has been wrong, despite all the criticisms you hear from the mainstream media, the legacy fake news media about Alex Jones. And now he's actually written the book on the Great Reset. I'm currently halfway through it, Pat. It's a riveting read. This book.
Now, George, you've got to help me get Alex on one of these.
I will, mate. I will. I'll do my best to help you with that.
Thank you.
But Alex Jones said to me last night, basically, it's reconnecting with humanity. It's going out and actually doing things that are community. You know, going to the old person's home, he said, and sitting there and reading with someone and connecting with them, someone who might not have seen anything. You think, well, how's that doing it? Well, trust me, it's doing it, because the more and more we can make this movement local and re-spark reignite, as Monica's word is, community. Well, we're doing something against the globalists. So anyway, George, that's all I can add for now, Pat. I'm going to contemplate that more and more, and the more I find out about what we can do, the more I'll impart.
You're a great freedom fighter, and I want to thank you for being on today. I've got a few things to say before we close the broadcast. I said about 45 minutes. But George, where can we find you? I want to encourage everyone to subscribe to George's newsletter. Get there, support him. He's a voice. And here's what I love about George. He doesn't put stuff out there that's just all this woo-woo nonsense. It's practical, it's solid, and it's factual. And I want to thank you for the research. George, you give me a lot of ammunition to put in my gun. Good. We mentioned about woke, and if you didn't listen to my rant yesterday, folks, go back and listen to it, because woke wants to repeal the past, repay a debt, remove foundations, rewrite the rules, reset the game, and rule people. That's woke. And what saddens me is when our churches have gone woke and when our leaders have gone woke. And, we don't have time to get into it today, but I'll try and bring you back so we can talk about this new voice thing. I mean, if they want a voice, let me just say, Senator Jacinta does a great job, and, with this whole voice thing. But, George, where do we find you? And by the way, folks, I've got to mention, next Tuesday, I've got Senator Alex Antic coming on, so it's going to be a big week. So, George,
fantastic guy.
Where do we find you?
Yeah. Well, if I can just add in one thought on the voice, Pat, I think it's part and parcel of the corruption of democracy, the fact that you would try and set up a race-based or an ethnicity-based chamber of parliament really completely usurps a democracy, and that will see fundamentally the complete and utter collapse of our democratic institutions if it comes to play. And I think that's part and parcel why it's being pushed by the elites, because they know they want to collapse the system, mate. They want to collapse it politically, socially, culturally, economically. They want a complete change so they can get a great reset. So everything needs to be viewed through that prism these days. Mate, where they can find me and my thoughts, my missives, my ramblings, my rants, and my analysis is at nationfirst.substack.com. nationfirst.substack.com. You can sign up and become a free subscriber. You don't need to pay a cent. You can take out a 7-day free trial of the paid version, and you can read what's up there and decide whether you want to be part of it or not, or you can just dive right in and take out a paid subscription. It equates to, I think, less than the price of one of the major daily fake news newspapers that we have in Australia every day. If you bought one of those papers every week, you'd be spending more than what you would spend in a Nation First subscription, Pat.
And that stuff is fake news anyway. I'll make sure we put up a link on there, George. Thank you so much for being part of today. I've got some stuff to share with everyone, but thank you, George. You're a blessing.
Thank you,
and you are to our nation. We're very grateful. God bless you. Thank you. Now, folks, a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Look, I've been a freedom fighter for the last 2-3 years and had great support from the likes of George and Monica Smith, Senator Alex Antic. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about, and you've got to hear me here, I'm really concerned about people's finances, and I have been for a long, long time. And with that, we want to host, and we are hosting next Wednesday an event. And I'm glad that that George mentioned about the whole crypto thing, because there's a lot of lies out there, and people are saying, oh, you're not making money in crypto, and Bitcoin's going down the tube, and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, okay, well, let me just tell you, if you're going to be an investor, when do you want to buy? When things are through the roof or when things are down? Be smart, folks. We need to be educated in these things. Even the master said that the sons of darkness are smarter than the children of light. And we need to be wise when it comes to financial matters and get a financial education. So next Wednesday, my great friend, Jonathan Job, is going to be hosting an event to educate you on how you can make money on crypto, whether it's going up, down, left, or right. Yes, you can. So please don't go putting silly comments in here when there is a world-class expert. If you go to mercedes.com/JJ, you will be able to register for free. Will he have an educational product where you can continue education? Absolutely, but you're not under any compulsion, but come and learn. And this is what he said to me. He said, Pat, The US government has come out and officially said they will not be banning things like crypto. South Africa is now allowing people to invest in crypto. There is over 300 million new crypto accounts open and climbing. And if we don't get in now, there's 2 times now and too late. Now, I made 580% return on it, by the way, then it went down. But guess what? It went back up. And you can learn to flip. There's so many strategies. You don't have to do buy and hold. Listen to me, because I've got other things to share with you that are very important. Don't switch off now. Don't put your head in the sand and go, woe's me. Do you know what? In spite of what happened in the last 2 years, incredible opportunities have arisen. And we can't stick our brain in a pickle jar and say, well, I'm going to reserve this until Jesus comes back. Don't do that. We must be active. We must be people that create wealth for our children and our children's children. It should Christ tarry. And whether you're a believer or not is irrelevant to me. This platform is for all people of all faith, agnostics, atheists, everybody. And when it comes to financial matters, it affects us all. If you want to beat inflation, this is one of the ways you can beat it. This is, Jonathan is actually going to speak on his #1 strategy to beat inflation. You've got to get ahead of the pile. Hoping, wishing, and praying isn't a financial strategy. So go there, mercedes.com/JJ. And, of course, listen to me very carefully. The 18th of September, we are launching our revival rallies. We need a spiritual awakening. These are spiritual problems. And starting on the 18th of September, we're starting in Bow Desert. Come on, folks. Come from all over Australia, all over Queensland. We're praying for an almighty awakening, just like the days of Whitfield, just like the days of William Booth. We need this now. We need this now. Just posting and screaming and yelling on social media won't change a nation. We need a revival, spiritual, economical, financial, and we've all got to be part of it. If my people, call by my name. Now, we're going to be in Bow Desert from the 18th to the 25th. Then we're going to Toowoomba. We're going there from the 9th to the 12th of October. Pastor Jimmy, if you say, where can I go to church in Toowoomba? Well, there's Victory Church. Pastor Jimmy there is going to be hosting us. We've got a facility there. We'll be having our meetings. And by the way, in Bow Desert, we're going to be doing nightly meetings and in the morning teaching. I'm bringing my great friends Steve Penny and David Gilpin in. They're going to be teaching in the morning. I'll be teaching in the morning. We're going to talk about prophetics. The prophetic is going to be very, very powerful. Then Toowoomba, the 9th to the 12th. Then we're going to Hervey Bay. Now listen to me very carefully. I have been fighting every demon in hell to get up to that Hervey Bay, Maryborough area, including religious ones. And I'm not apologizing about it for making that statement. If there is a leader or a church out there that's got the guts and the spiritual intuition and the heart for a nation to be able to host a revival meeting, I don't care what denomination you're from, I need a facility and I need somewhere where we can put people once we finish those rallies. We're coming to Hervey Bay, whether religious people want us to be there or not. I'm making that commitment. I'll go do a meeting in a pub if I have to. Believe you me, I've done it before. And religious establishments are going, oh, no, well, wait, you know what? These are the same people that went and told you to go and get jabbed. But I know there's a remnant out there. And this is not having a shot at Hervey Bay or Maryborough. It's a general statement, okay? Hervey Bay, Maryborough is a wonderful place. Some great people. But there's a lot of religion out there as well. And let me tell you, I've been fighting religious demons my whole life, including the ones that I had myself, I've got to tell you. And I'm not having a go at people. I want to encourage you. We need a revival. And people say to me, why would you go to those places? Because they're the places that nobody wants to go. And just remember, awakening started in towns, Azusa Street, Pensacola, Toronto. Why not a place like Maryborough or Hervey Bay? So if you know anyone, a pastor, a leader out there, let him know. Get him to get in touch with us. By the way, I've kind of found a facility anyway, so we're coming. We're going to be on TV, advertising, social media, print media. We're coming. We're going to be doing that. And then in the first weekend of December, we're coming to Perth. Pastor Clive over there in Perth, we're hosting a meeting starting, I think it's the 4th or the 5th in Perth. Now, you need to go to mercedeslive.com and register. Why? Look, if there's a change of venue or something goes wrong, we want to get a hold of you folks. We want to get a hold of you. Go there. The admission is free. Bring your families. Bring your friends. I'm bringing an entire team, a worship team, a whole production, so we can really, take this on every level, attack these hordes of hell on every level. We need your support to do that. So go to MercediLive.com. It's time for an awakening. You say, Pat, I'm not a believer, but I follow you. Show up anyway. Come on, these are not meetings just for the religious folk. Those of you that know me know I'm not very religious. It gets me in a bit of trouble. So these are meetings for everyone, the whole community, the whole community. I'll be addressing some of the things that are happening in our community and in our world right now. These are not political rallies, but I will be making social commentary about what's going on in our world. So, hey, next Wednesday, our event online, it's free. The rally's MercediLive.com. Make sure you're part of it. And on Sunday morning on Reborn, I'm going to be doing a very, very powerful message, Sunday morning, 9 a.m., called The Test of Your Treasures. So make sure you're part of it. Oh, also, if you are following us, please get on over to Rumble. We have various other platforms. Of course, Instagram has been putting us through the ringer. But if you go to our links, and I'll get my team to put a link there in this chat, follow us on Instagram and hightail it over to Rumble, because you just never know when we might need to have to get over there. So, folks, I want to thank you. I'm going to come back tomorrow and do just a little 10, 15 minute, because I've got something stirring in my heart. But listen to me. Listen to me. Please don't switch off. Get to these rallies. Get to these rallies. Let's believe for a great awakening. Come on. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I've upset some religious people. And I've upset some denominations. But can we put our differences aside? I may have got it wrong a few times, and I've apologized publicly. But let's work together for an awakening in this country. Come on. Come on. We got a guy that's 6'3" and a guy that's 6 foot. Obviously, I've got nothing in common with them. I'm 5 foot. I'm 163 centimeters. But let me give you this illustration. A guy that's 6'3" and a guy that's 6 foot, and they fight over 3 inches of difference, rather than the 6 feet they got in common. We've got to find common ground. We've got to find common ground. And that's exactly what the President of the United States said to Boeing. He said to Henry Ford. He said, I've hated you guys and you've hated me. But right now we've got a war with Germany on one side and we've got a war with the Japanese on the other. And if we don't work together, we're all going to lose everything. So I need to build an army. And folks, listen to me. We all need to do our part. So for those leaders and pastors out there, get behind these things. This is about the kingdom. It's about people. It's about souls. It's about eternity. Not about a religious denomination. Unless that's more important to you than humanity. So I want to leave you with that. MercediLive.com. Bow Desert on the 18th. Toowoomba 9th to the 12th. Harvey Bay, I think it's the next month. I don't remember the exact date. And then we're going to Perth. We're going to be coming to Sydney as well. We're going to be going over to the Central Coast area, South Australia next year, Sunshine Coast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We took a little bit longer. Can you please share this message? Don't hold it to yourself. Share it. God bless you, and thank you, everybody.